Hello, you're through to Books Boys. You've got Dean on the line. Who's calling?
Hi, Dean. It's Carla Lauder here. My pen name is CL Lauder, so I shall just correct myself there.
Okay, nope, that's fantastic. And it's a great coincidence you would call in just when we were talking about your book. Fantastic. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. Yeah,
Good.
doing great. I'm in Hong Kong. The weather is a bit sort of rainy and windy, but all good.
Thanks. I got a copy of the book here as well. Fantastic. I loved it. And you're in Hong Kong. That's great. So you grew up in South Africa, but you live in Hong Kong. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Nice.
I was in South Africa till I was about 20, and then I went to the UK, and then later on to Hong Kong. So
Ah, you
yeah,
came via the UK as well. Okay,
yeah,
cool. So you've moved around a little bit, but that's
yeah,
good.
yeah.
Fantastic. So this is your first book. Is that right?
Yeah, it's the first one I've been willing to publish.
Oh, willing to, but okay.
Yeah. I worked on a few things before this. I was trying originally to write for middle grade, but the books, I just didn't feel that they were really, that probably it wasn't really the genre that I most enjoyed. And I think that was the problem. So I most enjoy YA. And
hmm
then when I changed that and started to write YA, that's when sort of I feel like the plot really fell into place and yeah, I kind of got my mojo.
Okay. So you're better writing what you enjoy reading yourself, I guess, or
Yes,
the type. Yeah, I
yes,
mean that makes sense, right?
makes sense.
So
Yeah.
in that case, this is a trilogy, or this is part one of a trilogy. Is
Yes.
it quite ambitious to start with a trilogy?
Well, possibly it is, but however, I actually started this trilogy with book two. So I
Ah.
already have book two.
Oh, wow,
I'm
okay.
working on editing it. But what happened was when I was going through the process of really, getting a developmental editor to go through it,
Mm,
his feedback was, well, what has happened to make this alien race that are so sort of fanatical? Like, what's the background here? Do you know what's really led to this stage, like the book two stage? And I
okay.
thought about that and I was like, well, I don't actually know what's really driving them. And I think that's what was so fun about book one, like trying to really figure out what was making my villain so emphatic about, the actions that he was taking. Why was he fanatical?
hmm
Why was he willing to move his sort of race to a different planet? Um, and that exploration turned out to be the Quelling, and it was quite nice in a way because it just all the puzzle pieces just fell into place, and I feel like it explains book two really well and gives a good foundation.
Okay. Did you find it easy to write, or did you feel constrained by what you'd done already in book two?
I think it was much easier to
It was
write,
easier.
where I was going. Yeah,
Okay, cool. So the endpoint's in place. It's easier to figure out how to get there, I guess.
that's right. If you can
Fantastic.
see the end, and I think that's some advice I've read somewhere. When you write a book, you have to just, I think it was Michael Lewis actually, um, who did Moneyball. He
hmm
said that, when you write a book, you have to kind of already know where you're going to end up. What's your end point?
Yeah, I suppose that's, a few people have told us that if you know what the end is, then it's a bit easier to get there rather than just writing and seeing where it goes, I guess.
That's right. Yeah.
So what's the plan for book three then? Have you got some
So
ideas formulated?
I do. I have book three in draft. It's very still horrible. And when you read first draft, it kind of makes you sort of itch all over. Yeah, it's there. So but a lot of the I guess the themes and the premise is there, and the kind of new things that I want to look at and delve into, those things are there. So yeah, I feel like I can pick that up quite easily after book two and try and hone it.
Nice. I suppose the question. So when I read this, it took me a while to get to grips with some of the terminology because, of course, we're dealing with aliens and some sci-fi elements, so it's not gonna be it's some words to get used to. How difficult was it? Maybe it wasn't difficult. What was your kind of process for coming up with the world, I guess, that it's set in with obviously with the quelling and the stand and all this kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, so I already had the concept of the quelling from book two. So book
Sure.
two, is basically it's a long-standing alien invasion, and you've got this alien race, and they're adopting humans who are orphans, and then they're using them. They're using their bodies basically as a transportation mechanism. So it's
Yeah.
like they're using them to host them. So I already had that. So I started with that. And then I had to figure out, well, where are they from? Like what has brought them to this world? Like, how did they get there? Why are they there? So really, and I think this is also another piece of good advice for any wannabe writer, is a good place to start is with your villain. Because
Ah.
if your villain falls flat, then your book is going to fall flat. You
Mm.
really need a villain, and you need somebody who has got a proper calling, like what's their reasoning for doing what they're doing. So I started with that, and then I came up with the world where they were and how they'd settled. So there's this in the Quelling, there's a definite sort of divergence of what these remnants want to do. So some of them are semi-benevolent in that they want a symbiotic relationship with the local population, but some of them are very non-benevolent, are quite evil. They just want to take humans and use them for their kind of transportation mechanism. So we had that divide. So then I had to kind of come up with a planet. You draw your map and then set them out in different places on the map. And then just had to think about, well, what was the impact on the local population of having these two different sort of oppressive regimes that were on that local population.
So you're happy to call it dystopian then, with words like oppressive
Definitely.
regimes? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was definitely my go-to, because I guess a lot of my inspiration is definitely like from Hunger Games Divergent books, which
Hmm.
I absolutely loved. So yeah, definitely I would say dystopian.
No, I think I was getting some dystopian vibes reading it for sure. So we have Calypsy who's kidnapped, or who's taken away by a Gorogal.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's good
So
pronunciation.
that word was getting to me for a while, Gorogal. So there's a lot of words to learn, and of course you mentioned we've got the remnants and all this kind of stuff. Do you want to explain to us the basic premise here about so our main character, now let's see if I can pronounce her name properly, Kicha?
It's Kita. It's a silent J.
Ah, the J is
Yeah.
silent. Okay, Kita, that's much easier. Um, Kita's kind of our main character. Calypsy, of course, has been taken away by the Gorogal, and she wants to go and get her back, and that's kind of her main plot.
Mhm.
Um, I suppose the question is how was it writing her as a main character? Because her motivations are about things we don't necessarily know about. They're in another world. So how did you find, it's difficult to empathize with, oh yeah, I'm gonna go stop the Goro Girls or something, you know?
Well, I think so. For me, I was going for that oppressive regime. So I kind of wanted, um, I wanted a dystopian that wasn't sort of overdone. So I think there's a lot of
Hmm.
dystopias out there. And I thought this oppressive alien regime, like a long-standing alien regime, I thought that wasn't really so particularly overdone. So I just kind of had to get into her head. I mean, she's had a hell of a lot of torment in her life. So not only by these aliens, the remnants who've invaded her planet, and have this sort of, it's called the body trust, but a system where they go about and um, basically in this universe of the Quelling, the local population have to cede control of their bodies for one day every month. And in exchange for that, they get peace with the remnants.
Hmm.
So she has to go through all of these things. What that first day when she hits 16, she has to go and present herself and accept one of these beings to host it. And while she's hosting it, she doesn't have any memory of that time. So it's completely out of her control. So I had that. I wanted to explore that. Like, what is that
There's
like?
a lot you can do with that. Yeah.
Yeah, giving up your bodily autonomy, like willingly or not so willingly, but under duress, giving up bodily autonomy. So I was exploring that, and then I was also exploring. Um, she's convinced that her mother is murdered, but she's convinced she knows who murdered her mother. So I'm exploring that, but I don't want to give too much away. But a lot of the story is about that sort of desire for vengeance and how her relationship with Calypsy and Kranich, and also her experience with Netzi, who is a bit sort of near the end of the book, so I won't go into too much details there, but how those relationships kind of quell her need for vengeance and her, she at the beginning of the book, she really hates the Remans, understandably, but she hates all of them indiscriminately. And she meets
Yeah.
Kranich, and he's actually a nice Reman. So, I wanted to explore, well, that's just such a truism, right? You can't base your hatred on a race. You have to, it's all about individuals. You interact with individuals, you make your decisions based on that relationship. So those were really the things I wanted to explore with her. So I guess that's how I approached her character.
But it's good. I wanted to ask you about Kranich next, actually, because he seems like a nice chap, and she wasn't expecting that, I guess. So it's kind of nice
Yeah.
to see that. And there's some moments of niceness in the book when is it Melric's father they have to help
Merrick. Yeah.
Merrick,
Yeah.
and it's kind of like, oh well, we wouldn't normally necessarily be doing this, but he kind of takes him. He's like, no, we're gonna help him, and he goes in and he goes like, you gotta help this guy, and everyone's kind of like, all right, we didn't expect you to kind of come in and kick up a fuss about it, kind of thing. But he's insisting, like, I'm gonna do a good deed, like I'm gonna help someone. Why wouldn't I? And it's nice to see the expectation being broken, I think, on that. Kranich, I do like Kranich, but it's probably, Keach is still the one that I maybe feel more empathy for overall, I guess. Yeah.
I think you get a greater insight into her character, and also she's so troubled. Like, she's had so many terrible things happen to her, and a lot of the book is really about how, in a way, that experience makes her stronger, and she's able to deal with a lot of what happens in the plot, purely because
Mm.
she's had those really bad experiences. Whereas Krennic is really, he hasn't had a lot of days in a body. He's basically almost like a 4-year-old, but not really, but he's had like a 4-year-old's
Yeah.
amount of in a body. And he, his experience of this planet is completely different to hers. He's just in wonder of everything. So he very much juxtapositions her experience of the world, where everything, she sees everything as kind of a threat or something that she wants to beat up or something.
Yeah. So you mentioned, of course, her mother. Shall we mention her relationship with her father as well? Then her father's, I guess they call him a potion master.
Yes, that's
Um,
right.
he ends up in a bit of trouble himself. I don't want to give sort of too many spoilers about that, but it's trouble that I guess he wasn't expecting. He's just trying to get some land and ends up involved in a court case. Do you want to tell us a little bit about her relationship with her father then?
Sure, yeah. So I guess she grew up with her father and her mother, and then her mother was murdered. I know, first of all, before that, yeah, her what happened with her father is that um, he was going to collect a debt, and he had a little spat, and then he basically flicks a nib of coal onto a rooftop and burns down this house by accident, or at least he believes this is
Hmm.
an accident that happens. And um, what happens after that is that under this crazy judgment system, Kita is given away to her stepfather, and the mother is given away to the stepfather, who is basically the owner of this house. So they're given as a kind of a compensation for the fact that guy has lost his house. So I guess Kita was taken from her father at quite a young age, and then her mother was murdered. So she's lost her family, and she's living with now her stepfather, who's quite he's not terribly involved. So she still goes and she visits her potion master father, and she's very into all of the different potions. She remembers her childhood, where
Yeah.
she would time sort of amongst these potions and smelling them and naming them. And she has a lot of good memories there. But her father, I guess, is very troubled by these events. So he's kind of locked himself away in this little hovel somewhere in the mountains and kind of keeps away from everybody as well. So she goes to see him every now and then. And he's also quite vengeful. And I think that she's probably picked it up a bit from him,
I
which,
like him though.
yeah, no, he's a good guy.
Yeah, and it's yeah, well, we don't know yet necessarily what happened. I'm not going to spoil anything, but he gets into a little difficulty, but he's a fun chap.
Mm.
So before we do anything else, I'm going to just mention if you would like to plug your website or just tell people where they can get the book, first of all.
Yes, sure. My website is cllauder.com. The book is available on pretty much every sort of online bookstore. So, Amazon and Apple, Kobo, all of those.
Cool.
You can order the physical copy from Amazon. And yeah.
Fantastic. So there's one final question that we always ask, but before I get to it, I did want to point out just because you mentioned about the kind of justice system, and there is a funny bit where they sort of say, "Well, what crime have you committed?" And he says, "Well, I took over an old guy's body and put on a skirt or something or a dress," and like, "Oh, well, what a hardened criminal like you must be to to have done that." It's nice to get a little bit of humor here and there.
Yeah.
So the final question that we ask everyone is, if there's any book in existence that you wish you'd been the person to write, what would it be?
That's almost too easy, but I have two.
Okay, we'll take two.
So The Secret History is my sort of number one go-to sort of singular book by Donna Tartt. It's absolutely incredible. I think it's strange, but I think that you know a good book when you can remember exactly where you were when you read it. Because all of the
Mm,
books that I've really enjoyed, I remember exactly. And it's weird that you would be so sort of in tune with your environment when you're in the book that you really enjoy
mm,
because you think you'd kind of let go of all that. But actually, it seemed like it's the other way around for me. That book really, I just remember exactly where I was when I was reading it. And it was a total experience. So that's a great book. And the other one is a trilogy by Laini Taylor, which is Daughter of Smoke and Bone, which I think quite sort of fits with also my type of genre, very much like a fantasy and, a young heroine that's, she's mentally strong, but a little bit, I guess, a little bit woeful as well.
okay,
So yeah, those are two excellent books in my opinion. The second one is a trilogy.
fantastic.
Mm,
Oh, the second one's a trilogy. Is
yeah.
that the inspiration for your own reason to write a
Oh,
trilogy, or?
oh yeah, quite possibly. Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
thank you so much for calling in. I love the book. I'll look out for part two when it comes out. Some people say like, "Oh yeah, part two, I got to start it. It'll take a year or two." So I'm glad to know that yours is basically already done. So that's
Yeah,
that's good.
I'm editing it now, so yeah.
Fantastic. And take care. Thanks for calling in. Enjoy the rest of your
Thank
day.
you.
Thanks.
Thank you, you too. Bye
Bye.
bye. Bye.